Welcome back to another Xtreme Book Club video. Today we have a viewer suggested book, and not just one person, but several. We are going to be covering Gone to See the Riverman by Kristopher Triana, a book that is a little different from the rest of the books we have covered. It is in fact splatterpunk, decidedly so, but it is told in a weird way. In this book, it is divided into three sections. There is what is going on in the present of the story, then there's what is going on in the past, and then there is some letters sent between characters. If you do not know how we do things on this channel, let me break it down for you. We start with an intro, which you're listening to now, and it is where I discuss the author of the book itself a little bit. Then the majority of the video is the summary of the book, where we summarize the book. Then finally we have an analysis at the end, which is where we will discuss the themes or messages of the book. During the summary, know that I will be showing some gameplay in the background so it isn't a black screen. However, if anything interesting comes up, I will show it on screen and let you know. That way, you can have this video open on another tab while you play a game, or draw, or do whatever else. But know that I appreciate all of you who watch this video and leave a like, because it helps me out a lot. We recently got to 50,000 subscribers, and every one of you means the world to me. But without waffling on any further, let us get into Kristopher Triana's Gone to See the Riverman. There's only two places people can find rest: in the woods or in the grave. That was the last line in the letter that Lori got from Edmund, a serial killer that was in jail. This line was strangely poetic for him. He usually had misspelled words and poor grammar, so this was an extremely good sentence for him. Lori wondered if Edmund was sending that crazy Nico woman the same letters. She was more his type anyway. She was of Asian descent, and everybody knew that Edmund Cox preferred the women of Asian descent. Almost all of his victims were, and the ones that weren't could have passed for being from Asia. Lori was not of Asian descent, but she could pass as someone who was. Nico was one of these women who were obsessed with serial killers in jail. The ones that are sexually attracted to people like Jeffrey Dahmer or Ted Bundy. But Lori was different. Lori and Edmund actually had something. She slid the letter from him back in the box and looked at herself in the mirror. She thinks to herself that she'll be 40 in a few months. She wondered how her parents would feel about her talking to a serial killer like this. Would that have upset them? "Sissy, are you in there?" Rang out from the other room. Her sister Abby still called her Sissy, despite being 2 years older than her, one of her many childlike traits. Abby asks if Lori is going to visit her boyfriend today. Lori says she doesn't know. Abby then just says she's hungry. It is lunchtime after all. Lori completely forgot about lunch, she said. She's going to make her some sandwiches. And Abby says, ooh, she likes sandwiches. She then asks if Lori is going to marry her boyfriend. Because if two people love each other, they have to get married. That's how it works. Lori thinks to herself that, unlike Nico, she doesn't love Edmund. She's just extremely curious instead. She went to the prison and she made sure to be there early to fill out the paperwork. Recently, a lot of prisons have been doing Skype visits instead of in person, but Lori always made sure to go in person to see Edmund. She brought him his favorite snacks and sat down with him. Edmund Cox was a large man. He had some bad tattoos on his arms, and he had an intensity about him. It made him very masculine. "Hello, darling," he said. He started eating his snack and asks her if she got his last letter. Lori says yes. She read it 3 times even. He then asks, well, are you going to do it? Lori says yeah, she'll do anything for Edmund. Edmund says, oh, and you will. He says that he knew she wasn't like the other groupies. Lori hated that term, groupies. She wasn't like the others. She wasn't a groupie like Nico. She and Edmund had something closer. She wanted to know everything about him, like she would see on those true crime documentaries. He then says, so, you're gonna accept this quest I've given you? I told you out in the letter? She says, yes, and then he reiterates what she has to do. Down in the valley of Killen, near the Hollow River, there is a shack, and inside the shack there is a key in a chest. Take it. Lori says she will. She'll bring Edmund the key, but he says, no. Don't bring me the key. Give it to the Riverman. That hadn't been in the letter. What is he talking about? Edmund says that take the key and bring it further up the river. There, she'll find the Riverman's shack. Lori asks, okay, well, what's the Riverman's name? What's his address? Why didn't he mention him in the letter? Is he expecting her? Edmund just says, he's just the Riverman. Lori asks if this is, like, dangerous to do this. Edmund says it's not like she's continuing his murders or smuggling drugs or something like that. She's just passing on a key. Or returning it. Depends on her. Lori says, okay, it's just giving someone a key, right? He was asking her to do this, not Nico or any of the other pen pals that Edmund has. He wanted her. She wanted to do this just to see Edmund's shack alone anyway, so she accepts. She got back to the house and she didn't want to deal with Abby and this whole thing. Abby can't stay home alone. She always wanted to go wherever Lori went. She would even throw tantrums whenever she went to work normally. I want to go with Sissy, she would say. And every time Lori would have to explain that it isn't fun to go to work at a diner or drive people to the airport as an Uber driver. But every time, Abby would whine and complain and pout until she got her way, or Lori left her alone with the babysitter. When Lori told her that she was going to Killen, Abby immediately said she wanted to go. But Lori thought there would be no way that she could bring Abby. It would slow her down, and it's not like this is a vacation anyway. I want to go. I want to be with Sissy. I don't want to be left alone. Lori tries to explain that she won't be alone, but with a sitter. Abby says she isn't a baby. She didn't want a babysitter. Lori thinks that it would be hell for Abby and the sitter if she left without her. Lori tries to get her to calm down and say, stay with the sitter and I'll get you something special. But then Abby says, please don't leave me like Mommy and Daddy did, or Petey did. That struck a nerve with Lori, and that's all she needed to hear. They had everything they needed for the trip. Lori's big backpack and Abby's Sailor Moon bag. Flashlights, food, bear spray, a compass, and the letter with the instruction. Lori had told Abby that they're going on an adventure to calm her down. Like when they were kids and made pillar forts, that kind of adventure. One of the only times in Lori's life that she was happy. Things were simpler back then. Back when Abby was still her big sister in more than just age. And back when their brother Petey was alive. Abby asks if they're going on this adventure for her boyfriend. The boyfriend that Sissy would marry. Abby didn't know who Edmund Cox was. She didn't read the newspaper or watch the news, though she liked it when Lori would read books to her. Abby smiled ear to ear. Her dentures needed cleaning, and her scars on her face stretched as she smiled. I'm Sissy's best friend, she said. Lori kissed her forehead because Abby was more than her best friend. Abby was her only family, and her big sister. The next day, when they started on their drive, it was cold and gray. They drove, and even with the heat on in the car, it was still cold. Lori wanted to be to the cabin already. She imagined it a large, cozy log cabin where Edmund spent his winters. Abby sat in the passenger seat with her pink Boston Red Sox hat. She didn't know what the Red Sox were, but she liked the big B on the front. It's the name of an animal too, Sissy, not just a letter, she would say. They were in Killen for almost 45 minutes, but hadn't seen another car the entire time. It was desolate, to say the least, where God lost his shoes and all that. Sissy, the woods are like a fairy tale. They're magical. Lori was happy that Abby wasn't afraid of the woods. It would be much easier if she wasn't. She wouldn't have to calm her down at all. She remembered Edmund's words again from the letter. The key didn't belong to him anymore. It belonged to Lori, and she had to give it back to the Riverman. Who was this Riverman anyway? He didn't even have a name. Was he into the same stuff as Edmund? The rapes, the killings, the dismemberings? Abby then asks if they can have a tea party when they get to her boyfriend's fort, like when they were kids. Lori says, maybe. They'll see how clean the cabin is. Maybe they can even eat lunch there. Lori expected to be there and back by nightfall, so they couldn't screw around today. If they did, Edmund might even get bored of waiting and give the task to Nico instead, and Lori couldn't have that. They got further along down the road, and the rain was hammering down on them. Hard. It's raining, Sissy. Lori assures Abby that they'll be okay. They have their raincoats. They get out of the car, and Lori thought about her last boyfriend, Matt, who had broken up with her about 5 years ago. It was her last real relationship. It's raining, Sissy. You've already said that, Abby, Lori says. Sometimes Abby's redundancy got on her nerves. Lori began walking towards the river in the woods and only turned around when she didn't hear Abby following her. She was just staring at the river. Don't you want to get to the fort, Abby? Abby then snapped out of it and ran towards Lori and latched onto her upper arm. Abby didn't always make sense. Brain damage will do that. How long is it going to rain, Sissy? The next chapter is what I explained in the intro, where there are 3 types of chapters in this book. One is in the present, one is in the past, and this type, which is chapter 3, is the letters. The letters that Edmund and Lori have sent to each other. This letter is from Lori to Edmund. It describes how Lori feels similar to Edmund in a way. She carries regrets of people she's hurt, intentionally or not, hearts she's broken. She says that Edmund carries those he hurts in a different way, keeping the pieces of those he's killed. But they're kind of similar. She continues that the other groupies only want Edmund for his fame, but not her. They have something special. Something only they can get to the bottom of together. She signs it off as, yours, Lori. As they walked into the woods, they saw movement in the forest. A large black shape in the fog. Lori tells Abby to get down, as she grabs her bear mace, and Abby gets down and her legs are twisted at a weird angle. She can't even stand straight normally, so putting her in that position wasn't the best idea. But as the shape moved, Lori realized it wasn't a bear in the woods. She tells Abby, get up, it's okay, hoping she didn't paralyze her sister with fear and have to talk her out of it. The man walked towards them. She saw him then. Extremely old, withered with age, almost like a zombie. He wore a tuxedo suit and was walking in the rain, early in the morning. A gnawing fear bit Lori's neck as he walked. She tells Abby, never mind actually, stay back down there. Good morning, my dear, he said as he walked towards them. He says, be careful down at the old hollow down there. The rain is making the river rise. But, hell, that's maybe what Killen needs, a baptism. Not many good folks here anymore. Lori tries to be polite and says they have to get going. The old man says yes, they have a long journey to go on, her and her friend. Lori stops in her tracks. How did he know there were two of them? Seeing her confusion, he points to her backpack. You got 2 sleeping bags. Besides, no one goes to the river alone. You're never really alone when you go up the river. Look, mister, we don't, Lori says and gets cut off. Can't go see the Riverman empty-handed now, can you? Lori stops. How did he know? The only thing that way is the Riverman. Lori stops and asks, well, who is the Riverman? What's his real name? The old man just says, you have an ass trip now. Lord knows I did. And then he just walks away in his soggy suit. Lori could swear she saw a worm or something on his shoulder as he walked by. Oh god, it's the troop all over again. The man walked away in the fog and sang a gospel into the sky, and as he did, Abby got up, back up. Who is that, sissy? Lori says she doesn't know. Just a weird old man, she guesses? But why was he here? Was he lost? Did his car break down? He couldn't have walked far, right? An old man like that? He could hardly stand straight, so the Riverman shack has to be close. They continued down the river and a thick mist came in. Lori then saw the sign that Edmund told her about to look out for. Into the Hollow, which, by the way, is a great Queens of the Stone Age song, one of my favorites. The next chapter is the last of the 3 types of chapters, a chapter that takes place in the past. Pete was with his sisters in the woods. They actually let him hang out with them today. They never did that. Lori was 12, and Abby was 14 and a half. Pete was only 10. Movie about Pete, Abby called from ahead. She had grown taller in the past year, her crop top and ponytail bopping up and down as they moved. We're almost there. Pete didn't know where there was, but he was just happy to be along with his sisters and hanging out with them. Lori was ahead of both of them, not paying attention to either of them. Pete liked Abby more than Lori anyway. Lori got in moods where she would be mean to Pete for no reason. Abby was more popular and more outgoing. Pete wanted to be just like her, have tons of friends and stuff. Come on already, Lori called from somewhere that Pete couldn't see. Was she really that far ahead? He smelled something fresh as he continued, and then he saw where they were going. A cliff overlooking a river, a swing placed precariously over a tree branch swinging out over the cliff face. Abby tore off her shirt and went down to her underwear and straddled the swing. Pete then found himself extremely nervous. He then realized that they were going to jump off the swing into the river down below. Pete says, it's dangerous, don't do it, Abby. But they both say they've done it a million times. As long as it's rained the night before, like it did last night, the river will be high enough, and it won't hurt if you fall in, as long as you don't hit the rocks that are close to the cliff face, that is. This reminds Pete of nightmares that he has, but he didn't want to be a killjoy and have them not bring him along anymore to places. But as soon as Abby was about to jump, he found himself saying, wait, as Abby was swinging over. She stops and says, come on, Pete, don't be a wussy. And then she swings again and jumps. Pete screams as she plummeted down to the cliff and into the water. She emerged smiling and Lori cheered. Come on, Pete, you're next, Abby screamed from the water below. Pete says he doesn't know. He doesn't want to do this jump. Abby yells out for Lori, just put him on the swing and push him off. Pete screams, no! And Lori put her hand on his shoulder and says, it's okay. You don't have to jump if you don't want. Lori called down that he doesn't have to go if he doesn't want to. Abby calls back up, he has to be a man sometimes, just push him off, Lori. Lori says she's not going to do it. Abby makes her way back up and threatens to throw him off again, and Lori tells her to lay off. If he doesn't want to do it, Pete doesn't have to do it. Pete felt it was weird having Lori in his corner instead of Abby for once, but he was grateful. Fine, Abby said as she put her hands up. They walked back in silence to the house. Back in the present, Abby and Lori were walking across a rickety bridge as they continued up the river. Come on, Abby. The bridge was rickety. She wondered if Abby could even do it. But Abby started walking and started shifting her weight over and over and having fun on the rickety bridge. Lori called back to stop it, and she does. And they continue. Are we there yet, sissy? Abby asks Lori. Lori says, no, not yet. But do you want a snack? Abby says no, she wants to wait till they get to the fort. She then blurts out, why does your boyfriend not come to her apartment? Lori had to think about how to respond, and then Abby blurted out, is it because he doesn't want to see me? Lori says, of course not, rubbing Abby's back. Is it because you don't want him to meet me? Lori just says, Abby, Edmund is in a place where he can't visit right now. Like a hospital? Abby asks. Lori says, yeah, kinda, like a hospital. I don't like hospitals, says Sissy, Abby says, rubbing her lucky rabbit's foot. Abby had spent a lot of time in physical therapy in the hospital after the accident. She would scream like she was being murdered for the first time she tried to walk after the accident. She was so scared of everything back then. Brain damage will do that. Lori had wondered around then if their family would ever survive the weight of it all. But in the end, they didn't. Their family broke, like Abby's bones. Can I meet him after we get back? Abby asks. Lori hated the thought of that. But she just says, yeah, maybe. Sissy's gonna get married, and I'm gonna be a maid, Abby screamed out. Maid of honor, silly, Lori says. On who? Abby asks. Lori just smiles and hugs her. Abby tried to move her legs so her knees wouldn't bend too much because that hurt. She didn't want to burden Sissy. She wondered about Sissy's boyfriend. She didn't like calling him that, and she wondered if that was because of her. Abby knew about boyfriends, and she knew that they were bad news for her and Sissy, but she couldn't remember why. Whenever she tried to dig up that old memory, she would just get sad for some reason. But she was happy being the maid off on her, but not if Sissy would abandon her after they got married. Would she be thrown away like a toy no longer loved? She didn't want to lose her Sissy. She already lost Petey and her mommy and her daddy. She couldn't lose Sissy too. They had to be together forever. Around 4 p.m., Lori says, alright, let's take a break and eat our lunches. It is 4 p.m. after all. The green waves of the river lapped on the shore as Abby said, no, she wants to wait until they get to the fort. Lori says she knows, but they don't know how long it's going to be. But Sissy promised the fort. Lori says she knows, Abby, just calm down. Fuck you, Lori, Abby says out of nowhere. Lori, just as confused as us readers, asks, what's gotten into you? She never talks like that. Not only did she never curse, she never calls Sissy Lori anymore. Lori says, okay, and they eat a small snack of protein bars and water and they continue on. Lori didn't know what to think about Abby's outburst right then. It stung on her mind and she almost felt hopeless now. The cabin could be as far as 2 minutes away or 10 hours away for all she knew. She felt depressed about this entire trip. Abby, Edmund, and everything. What was she thinking? Being friends with a serial killer? And almost something more than a friend at this point? Most women wanted to get in bed with artists and men of power, but artists and musicians made magic. If Edmund made magic, it would be as black as the grave. She was setting herself up for heartbreak and she knew it. Lori thinks in her mind that everyone makes mistakes, even serious ones. She should all people should know that, right? How are you doing back there, Abby? Abby doesn't respond. She just wants to get to the cabin. They really are in the middle of nowhere. Killen was already a rural town, but now they are even further in the wilderness. This entire time since they've seen that man with the tuxedo, they haven't seen a single soul. Not even a fisherman on a boat. The next chapter is a letter to Lori from Edmund, and he is just so eloquent. I'm going to put it up on screen and read it. Just the first paragraph. Lori, thank you for them pictures. I know the guards confiscated the good ones that must have showed your sexy body. The one of your face still made me happy in my bed last night. I done come on it. I gotta be inside you soon, in your body, in your mouth, and I will. You can take that shit to the bank. Lovely. What a charmer. He continues that the place that Lori needs to go is his family shack in Killen. That's where the key is, deep in the woods. He says that there's only two places a man can find peace, in the woods or in the grave. Then she'll know what he knows. The water in the valley is low. She needs to go on this journey. Do it for him, and he'll know she is the one. Back in the present, the shack was dark. There was no key, let alone a lock. The fort, Abby says. The windows were covered in tinfoil. Random puddles of water were all on the floor. Whiskey bottles lined the shelves, and a portrait of Christ with the bloody crown of thorns hung in the room. It was also noticeably a lot colder in here than the outside, and it was already cold outside. Do you really want to eat in here? Lori asks Abby. This is the fort? Abby asks. Lori says that she didn't think it was going to be this dirty. They don't want to get sick, right? Lori tells Abby to wait outside. She can have a snack while Lori searches for the chest. When they're done, they can eat their sandwiches together. Abby ponders it for a second, one step behind as usual, and says, "Okay, sissy." Lori looks around the dust-covered shed to find nothing. Not a trace of a chest. The smell was awful in here, though. It smelled like a mouse had died or something in here. She looked around until she found a cellar door. A cellar in a small shack like this? It seemed weird. She felt a tinge of hesitation, but she thinks to herself that there's no way she came all this way for nothing. She opens the cellar door and immediately is hit by the unrelenting smell of death again. She turns away instinctively and wishes she had something to wash her mouth out with. She took a step down the creaky stairs and sees it's completely dark. The walls are made of stone and the smell was repugnant. Then she saw what she'd been smelling. She turned away yet again and vomited. How could she not? Not a lot came up, but she had to get it out. She could hardly tell it had once been human. But the upper torso was what made her come to the conclusion that it was. A dead woman, split from her chest to her asshole. A mass of rotting flesh hung from her front, black masses of wounds all up her chest, her long black flowing hair behind her. One of her eyes was there, and the other was a mass of gray worm food. Lori felt sick. Did she really admire a man who would do this? This had to have been his last victim. The body was still fresh, less than a year old. She should call the police, she thought. Not like Edmund could get in more trouble anyway. He was already in jail for life. She then wondered if she really felt a kinship with a man who could do this. She felt hate for him and love for him at the same time now. But he didn't seem like a hero to her. She brought Abby here like an idiot. What if she'd seen this? What a stupid fucking idea, Lori chastised herself. She then had a horrible thought. What if this victim wasn't Edmund's? What if this was a victim of the Rivermans, and Abby isn't safe out there alone? Abby? Lori called out from the cellar. Yes, sissy, I ate my sandwich. I was too hungry. Okay, she was safe. But there was no chest down here. The body then moved as a rat crawled its way from her groin flesh. She thought about it. A chest. He couldn't mean that kind of chest, right? But she already knew now where the key was. Lori looked back at the body, and it was like reopening a wound. Had she fallen in love too fast again here? A voice inside her head told her she was being stupid, insecure. Her last boyfriend, Matt, left her because she clung to him so much, treated him like a cheater, and never trusted him alone. Well, it's time to trust Edmund. She looked at the body and tried to focus on the center. That way it didn't really look human. If she did this, she was crossing a line into Edmund's world. She had done social taboos before, sure, but defiling a body? She stilled her nerves and stuck her hand in with a squelch. She moved around the black viscous fluids of the chest and pulled out chunks of rotting flesh looking for the key. It can't be that big of a key, right? She kept finding hard things she thought were the key, but were just pieces of carrion, until she found a long object, and she pulled it out of a web of cartilage. An old-fashioned key. She had done it. Just then, the cellar door slammed and locked. Lori ran to it and banged on it. Someone had her locked in here. More importantly, Someone could be out there with Abby. Somebody help me! Who's out there? She screamed. Why would I? Rang back out. It was the voice of a child, but it was familiar for some reason. Do I know you? Lori called out. In more ways than you should. Yes. Lori slammed the door, demanding whoever it was to open up, but now it was silent. The childish laughter gave way to girlish laughter. Lori knew it was Abby before she could even say the word sissy. The door flung open and Lori asked, why the fuck would she do that? Abby just says, it wasn't her, it was him. Lori says, there's only 2 of us here, stop doing that. Abby says, no. Petey was here. This was strange. Abby was acting strange even for Abby. Lori grabbed Abby's arm and pulled her out of the cabin. But if Petey should come back, Abby says, as she's dragged away. The next chapter is another chapter of the past. Lori wanted to kill Abby. She stole the boy she liked. David was all Lori thought about, and she stumbled her words whenever he was near her. She liked an older boy, and Abby had stolen. But then again, how could Abby have stolen him? She wouldn't know that Lori liked him. She told no one that but her diary, unless Abby read it. Lori looked down the high school hallway at Abby flirting with David, with her thick eyelashes and fluffy hair. Lori thought about shaving Abby's hair so David would leave her. This was the first time that she saw them actually flirting, though. Had they been having sex? The thought crushed Lori. But why would David want Lori, she thought. She was skinny, had no boobs or ass, unlike Abby. Lori had to think about what to do now. She had to research what boys liked. She had to figure out how to get David back. The next chapter is another letter, this time to Edmund from Lori. Lori says she's going to tell him about her sex life, as per Edmund's request. Lori says that in her family, sex was a taboo subject. She never had the talk with her parents or even mentioned sex around them, even after she became an adult. She didn't watch porn as a teenager or even as an adult either, as she figured if she indulged in masturbation, her dad would kick her out immediately out of the house. But she wouldn't even know that because sex was never brought up. The first time she saw anyone have sex was when she was 15. She was walking through the woods listening to Smashing Pumpkins, based by the way, listening to sad songs because her sister Abby had stolen a boy she'd like. Can you believe that, Edmund? His name was David. So she wanted to go to a secret place in the woods and write in her diary and cry to sad music. When she got there, though, she saw a couple having sex on a throw blanket. Lori, curious, poked her head out to watch, and noticed that, unfortunately, it was David and Abby themselves. Lori was horribly haunted by this, shocked. She watched him until David finished and shuddered as he did. Lori grew teary-eyed and thought to herself that she could never forgive Abby. She wasn't even mad at David. But eventually, she did forgive Abby. Now she takes care of her and loves her. But Edmund is the first person who Lori told that story. That's how much she trusts him. Yours, Lori. Back in the present, Lori looked at the sky and all the rain clouds. They didn't look right. They looked like they were almost alive with the thunder and rain. She kept looking at them to try to avoid the thoughts of her past and Abby's outbursts. She said it was Petey, Lori thought to herself. That's not possible. Lori worried that maybe Abby's condition was getting worse all of a sudden, maybe due to all the stress. Would she be a danger to herself and others soon? It's unlike her to talk like that, let alone say, fuck you, Lori, like she did earlier. I'm tired, sissy, Abby said behind her. Lori says, yeah, she's tired too. Ever since she was in that cellar, a thick fear has gripped her. As they walked, Abby says, Sissy, I don't think we should be here. Lori looked back inquisitively, and as she did, a different voice rang out. Who in the hell's that? A voice had an extreme southern drawl and was raspy. They looked up on the hill and saw a large, stocky silhouette. He was holding something and pointing it at them. Once he got closer, they realized it was a shotgun. What are you all doing around these parts? Don't you know this is private property? The man rang out. We are so sorry, Lori said. The man came closer and she could get a good look at him. Lori describes him as looking, quote, as country as dirt. A big black man in his 60s, wearing overalls and with white balding hair. Shit, you lost or something? The man said. Lori said, no, well, they're here to see a Riverman. The man lowered his shotgun and said, you're talking crazy. He didn't look angry anymore, though, but now more pensive and sad. Lori says, no, her friend specifically told her to find the Riverman around here, by the river. The man says that Well, either way, you're not going anywhere tonight. The storm is about to roll in harder than ever. Plus, it's nearly night. You're welcome to stay in my house, though. Or don't. I don't care. As long as you stay away from the chicken coop. Lori asks him where's his house, and he says just over the hill there. She says she didn't feel danger around this man at all, even. Not like the guy in the suit she saw earlier. She says her name's Lori, by the way, and that's Abby. The man says his name is Buzz. Buzz Flutterjohn. Buzz says he's about to start supper, so if they want to join him, now's the time. Lori looks back at Abby, who was incredibly pale and motionless, sick-looking. No choice, Lori guesses. They got to the house and it was twice the size of Edmund's shack, but it was still small. It had a tin roof where they could hear the rain coming down hard now. As they walked in, a huge St. Bernard comes over and Lori staggers backward. But like his owner, the dog was huge, but friendly. That's Jojo, Buzz says. He puts the shotgun near the door nonchalantly. Lori could just grab it and kill him right now if she was inclined, but Buzz didn't even seem to distrust Lori in the slightest. What a trusting man. In turn, Lori lowered her guard a bit and trusts him a bit more. They sit down and Lori notices a black and white photograph of a young black woman. Beautiful, a smile like magic. Buzz says he'll make supper in a minute, but he has to sit down. Getting up that hill isn't easy as it used to be. He points at Abby and says she probably had an even harder time than him, due to her barely being able to walk without crutches on her arms at least. Buzz says they're pretty far from the car park in the woods, unless they came by boat, of course. Lori says no, they didn't. It's been a long day. She didn't think getting to the Riverman would be this difficult. Buzz scoffs and says, someone told you to find the Riverman and you thought it'd be easy. Lori says she didn't know what she was getting herself into. Buzz says, well, she must love the person a lot to go through something like this for him. This place, these woods, killing itself, is an extremely unfriendly place. Lori says that he and Jojo seem friendly enough, though. Buzz says, well, thank you, but they're the one and only exception. This place is bad news. Lori asks, why does he stick around then? Buzz looks down and says, he was born here. Other side of the river, but still in Killen. Flutterjohns have been here for generations. He says that he never would have left this place in his entire life if it wasn't for Hattie, his wife in the picture. He goes on and on about how they met and fell in love instantly and how he used to work on a steel mill and brought her lunch at work. But after she died, he came right back to Killen. Now he's a fisherman on the river. No one leaves the river, though. Not for long, he says. Lori could tell this man was lonely. He would talk to just about anybody right now. She says, so, you know who the Riverman is? Buzz says, yeah, and he knows that she has to deliver something to him. Lord, how they come and go, he says. Lori asks, what do you mean? And he says, lots of folks come and deliver something to the Riverman. His mother used to think his dad was crazy for wanting to live here, but something about this place was in his father's blood, he continues. When he was a kid, other kids would tell stories about the Riverman. He doesn't remember a time when he didn't know about the ghost stories about him. Had they ever heard the story of Robert Johnson, the famous blues player that supposedly met with the devil at a crossroads to sell his soul so he could be the best guitar and blues player alive? The Riverman is somewhat similar to the devil in that story, only he doesn't take your soul. In fact, he doesn't take anything but the offering. The only thing the Riverman wants from you is for your soul to be as black as his. He doesn't hurt anybody or take anything. He inspires people to be just like him. Lori thinks that maybe she's made a mistake. Chasing an actual ghost story is what she's doing right now. She thought the Riverman was like a nickname for someone, not a legend like Bigfoot. Lori asks if Buzz believes in the Riverman. He says, it depends on the day. Sometimes years can pass in these woods and it's completely peaceful. But then something horrible happens, like a rape or murder or a mother throwing her children in the river. Then the thought of the Riverman creeps back in my head. If God and the devil exist, why not the Riverman? Something in this world has to turn men into rapists and murderers. Why not him? Lori says, no. Do you think it's real flesh and blood? Do you think it's a real person? Buzz says that the only people who know that are the people who've seen him, he guesses. Fools. He always asks for a trinket of sort. It doesn't matter what, but usually it's more how you got it rather than what you got. Buzz says it's like a chainmail. You have to be invited by someone to see the Riverman. He asks, who invited Lori anyway? Someone from Killen? Lori knew that Edmund was from here, and Buzz might know his name, so she goes with a nickname that no one had ever called him. A guy named Eddie, she says. Buzz's mouth immediately falls open, a flash of recognition in his eyes. Only one had ever been around here, and I sure as hell he ain't your friend. Lori knew right then she should have lied to him. Tell me you don't mean Edmund Cox, Buzz says. Lori admits it, and Buzz's face turned paler than any man of his complexion she'd ever seen. He's Sissy's special friend, Abby said, as she was falling asleep on the sofa. Buzz didn't yell at them to get out or anything. He just said, need some whiskey to get my head around this one. He grabs a bottle and says, it makes sense Edmund told her to come here. Rumors of him making a deal with the Riverman circulated just before news broke of what he did. Besides, Lori wouldn't be the first lady to come here on account of a bad man who she loved. Loved. The word Lori thought of. A warm feeling rushed inside her. Buzz says that his mama did the same thing. Lori asks if his dad went to see the Riverman and make a deal with him then. All Buzz could say was, yeah. Back in the past, Lori is writing in her diary on the bed. She figures she has to lose her virginity now. All that boys thought about was sex, right? Even sweet boys like David. So she had to learn to be good at it before she could even get a boyfriend. But she was milquetoast as they came. Her and her friends would rather do yearbook photos than go to a party. But she wanted to be like the popular girls with their dirt bikes and their crop tops. She stares out the window at the rain. She couldn't think of what to write down anymore. She then thought about her big sister, Abby. Popular, just like she wanted to be. Abby didn't ask for anything. She just took what was hers. Maybe that's what Lori had to change. Yeah, that's what she'd change. In the other room, Abby came in through the window and shut it silently. She didn't want to be caught sneaking back in, especially because she was tipsy. She was the type that would be in her pajamas as soon as she got home, so she took off her clothes and silently redressed in them. She could hide her tipsiness from her dad, but not her mom. She was sharp as an axe. Her mom was hard on the girls and easy on Pete, but her dad was easy on Abby and hard on Pete. So she just had to hope her mother wasn't awake. But she really had to pee first. So she walked out of her room silently, trying not to wake anyone. So silently that she heard noises from Pete's room. Hey, sidebar, if you think you know where this is going, no you don't. Pete had night terrors, so hearing him shuffle around wasn't all that weird. She got closer to the bathroom and the noises from Pete's room got louder. Sometimes he would sleepwalk, and that was dangerous. And she thought she heard him softly moaning. Man, the night terrors must be bad tonight. She should go wake him up. She gently opens the door, and at first, she thought she accidentally walked into Lori's room. She saw her sister on the bed, moving up and down like she was riding a horse, her slender frame illuminated in the moonlight. And under her was her little brother Pete, making those moans, and Lori doing the same. The hairs on Abby's neck stood up, and she had to cover her mouth to stop herself from throwing up. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. She ran to the bathroom quickly and threw up on the toilet. A few days before Abby had caught them, Pete was taking a shower. He had discovered pleasuring himself recently and been doing so in the shower. When the door quickly opened and shut, Pete put his hands up around his privates and covered himself and said, "I'm in here, go away!" He hoped it wasn't his mom or he'd be in trouble for raising his voice to her. But it was Lori. He said, "Just go away, Lori. He's taking a shower." But before he even managed to cover his privates, Lori had already seen it. "Can I watch?" she said. Pete had touched himself to Abby before when he saw her change, but he felt sick and immediately felt ashamed after. But Lori was developing too, so he continued. Lori awakes in the present, scared at where she was, and it all came back to her. Trip, Edmund, Buzz, Jojo the dog, the key. She looked around and saw Abby still asleep on the couch, and herself was on the bed. Buzz was asleep on the chair. She got up and had half a mind to just leave before Buzz woke up. She looked out the window, the horizon gray, just before sunrise. As she got her stuff, Buzz screamed bloody murder, and it shocked her so much she screamed, "The river done red, Hattie!" He screamed out from his nightmare, as Jojo walked up to him and licked his face. This seemed to be a common occurrence for the dog. He looked around and says that, man, he didn't have a nightmare like that in a while. Lori says that, oh, she's thankful for Buzz's hospitality, but they have to get going now. Buzz says, don't you get it yet? You're chasing a legend, or at least someone that already was dead. Lori says she didn't care. She's come this far. She and Abby are going to find him anyway. Buzz says they ain't going nowhere. The path ends pretty soon up the river. He points at Abby and says, if she's on those sticks, she ain't getting to the cabin. Lori says there has to be a way. Buzz mentioned he was a fisherman, right? Doesn't he have a boat? Can't he take them up the river in his little fishing boat? He says, no way. Bad enough that Lori's taking Abby on this journey. Lori blurts out she'll pay him $500. Buzz thinks for a second, but then says, no way, still. Lori says that she's been in the shack all night. She's seen it. He could use the money. Abby wakes up and yawns and says, is Buzz taking me and Sissy sailing? Abby looks at Buzz and he says, fine, one trip up the hollow and back. Abby begins singing about sailing right after. They leave the house and the clouds are just breaking after the storm. They get to the river on Buzz's little riverboat, just big enough for the three of them. They get on and Abby giggles as she steps on it, not having the right mind to be worried as the boat wobbles beneath her. Buzz brought two things. One was an oar. He said that the engine can be ornery sometimes, and he brings this just in case it sputters. Better be safe than sorry. And two was his slide guitar, in case he got bored going up the river. No telling how long this trip would take. They start up it, and that's when it started. The feeling of self-doubt. Was this the right play? The soft rock of the boat as they moved made Lori feel detached, like she was floating in darkness. She then got the feeling of her stomach floating, like when you go down a drop on a roller coaster. She was having a panic attack. We're sailing, sissy! Abby's jovial attitude snapped her out of it for a bit. Abby points a finger to her pink Red Sox hat and says, see, Buzz? A bee, like a flying bee. It goes buzz, buzz, like you. Buzz smiles at her and winks at Lori. There, Lori points to the side of the river. A small shack. Very small, smaller than Edmund's. Buzz says, nope, that's not it. That is Deacon Jones's shack. Lori has a revelation. A deacon? We ran into a guy with a black suit and white shirt. He kind of looked like a deacon. Was that him? Buzz says, yep, that would be him. Buzz says if they see him again, steer clear. He's not right in the head. Lori asks, what does he mean? And Buzz says, well, he was a deacon and he preached some weird form of Christianity, not one you'd find in a book anywhere. When he baptized people, he would keep them under for a long time, long enough for it to hurt. Well, one day, the deacon had sex with one of his 14-year-old followers. Then, the young child gave birth to twins, and she didn't survive birthing them. Then the deacon baptized them and drowned them in the river doing so. The deacon hasn't been right since, if he was ever right in the first place. Lori blurts out that he should be in jail for that. How horrible. Coming from Lori, that's pretty rich. Buzz says, well, she's not from Killen. The river here flows like no other, and the land has its own rules. They continue on, slowly treading down the river. As they continue, Buzz sings a depressing song about someone that the artist loved drowning in the river. He pulls out a bottle of whiskey and offers it to Lori, to which she just declines. Songs about love, Lori thought. Love is supposed to distract you from the bad things, but here I am, cold, wet, and tired for love. Love? Did she love Edmund? She was doing this all for him, right? If that wasn't love, then what is? Sissy? Lori looked at Abby. Sissy's gonna get fucked. Buzz and Lori both look shocked at Abby. Lori says, that's no way to talk to your sister, Abby. She says again, Sissy likes to get fucked. Sissy likes to get fucked on the ground. Buzz looks away in politeness. I can have him, you know. Your boyfriend, Sissy, just like I had David. Where was all this coming from? First the Pete stuff, then the cursing, now this? And she remembers David? What else does she remember from before the accident? The next chapter is a letter from Lori to Edmund. It says that she wants to share secrets with Edmund. Dark secrets she's never told anyone. To show him that they aren't so different. She understands how things can start small, like with jealousy, then it can fester into dark hatred. She wants to tell him something that she thought she was going to take to the grave. Back in the past, Lori's blood runs cold as she sees her father cry for the first time. Lori had never seen her father cry. He was always so stoic and stone-faced, and that stoicness meant strength to Lori. Please, son, just one slice. Pete had stopped eating. He had for a week now. Pete looked down at the plate and his mouth turned, and for a second Lori thought he was going to spill the beans, but he doesn't. Pete had been slipping away ever since that first night they spent together. Sidebar, it goes into like a decent amount of depth of the sex they had, but just know that Lori says she's never felt whole since her first period, but after that first night she felt whole again, finally not a virgin. Pete finished fast, but then it was over. The look of elation on Pete's face turned to that of horror and disgust with himself. They continued doing it over and over, as much as Pete resisted. They played doctor, even though they knew better, and kept going and doing it. Every single night. Lori was insatiable. Ever since, Pete had been slipping away, not eating. One night, Lori came in and Pete said, "Don't. We have to stop. We have to stop." Lori then asks Pete why, and Pete says it's wrong. Lori says, "Oh, but he doesn't think it's wrong when they're actually doing it. He gets his needs taken care of, but Lori doesn't." Pete says, "Please, don't." Lori demands now, "Get on the bed. If you don't, I'll tell Mom and Dad." Pete says, "What?" Lori bluffs that she'll tell Mom and Dad if he doesn't. She'll tell them that he forced her into it. Then everyone at school will know what you did to your sister. And so, they kept doing it. And Pete worsened more and more. He retreated into himself. He always stayed in bed. He refused to eat. He never even played his Nintendo or played baseball anymore. It's like he aged. He turned gray almost. One day, it looked like he was going to tell, and Lori had to convince herself that he wouldn't. He looked horrified at the notion that she would say it. He wouldn't do it, right? Abby had been giving her the stink eye lately, too. She thought she knew why. Maybe she saw her when Lori saw her and David near the swing. Finally, though, one day her mom suggested they all saw a family counselor. Later that day, Lori went back to the swing. The rope had gone green and rotten, just like her childhood. She had thought to tear it down, but then got on the swing instead. Her childhood was now falling apart. Ever since she had been sexually awakened, things hadn't been the same. She sort of wanted to go back, to when Dad was stoic, Mom was strong, and Abby didn't hate her. She even began to wonder if what she was doing to Pete was wrong. Pete was just being a baby, right? She sat up from the swing when she heard some rustling in the forest near her. She jumped and Abby walked out of the bushes, tears in her eyes. "Abby," Lori asked. "Just don't, Lori." "I know," she said between tears. Oh no, she saw me when she was having sex with David, Lori thought. She outbursted and tried to defend herself. "Oh, Abby thinks she's so much better than her, right? She stole David. But this is her spot too. Who cares if Lori saw them doing it?" Abby says, "Oh my god, that is not what this is about." Lori says, "Oh, it isn't? It isn't because I saw you get fucked? Do you like to be fucked like a dog on the ground?" Abby retorted, "And what about you? Do you like fucking your own brother, Lori?" Lori stammered backward. "What?" Abby says she saw her. Who cares about David? The counselor said that Pete's sickness can't be fixed until the root of it has been fixed. Lori has to tell Mom and Dad. Lori says no. No way. Abby says she has to, or she will. But Abby can help her. Help her tell Mom and Dad. They can tell them together. Lori stammers on the swing and says, "No, no way." She flinches and Abby grabs the rope as she does, and Lori flinches again, and then Abby slips. One foot slips off the edge of the cliff. Her eyes came alive, and for the first time, Abby didn't seem so invincible to Lori. Her beautiful older sister was in this one lone moment not the superior one. Abby tried to reach for Lori, but all Lori did was raise a hand as if to say bye as she fell. In the present, the three continued down the river, and the water shifted from blue to green to a dark purple to almost a burgundy. "What's going on with the river?" Lori asked Buzz, and he squints and slurs his words. "The peepers ain't what they used to be." He then says that the river gets rough up ahead. Rapids, even. Lori hears a rustling in the woods, and Lori quickly looks in that direction. A pale, lithe shape twists and turns through the woods. "Hey!" Lori calls out. Buzz tells her to calm down. He says that she's just trying to get him to keep going up the river, even though he said he can't continue to the rapids. A light, ghostly laughter rings out, and Buzz goes silent then. "Petey!" Abby calls out. Lori felt sick now. So sick that she drapes her body over the edge of the boat, and a small wave catches her hand, and the water was unnaturally warm. Lori looked in the water and saw her face in the reflection. She looked older, a red mask almost over her face from the reflection. She pulls up her arm and blood dripped down it. It looked like her wrists were slit from the water. She dry heaves and Buzz looks closer to the water. "It smells like copper," Lori says. "That ain't copper, that's blood. Addie saved me. The river of flesh." Buzz goes pale. "Buzz," Lori says. Buzz says there's no way he's continuing. "They say the Riverman lives on the river of flesh, but I've been this way before and this didn't happen." we're gonna turn back. He puts his hand in the water and lifts it back up to show Lori. See, this ain't water, it's blood. Something unnatural is going on all of a sudden. Buzz, you're bleeding, Abby says as he pulls his hand back up. Buzz looks over to her and says, it ain't my blood, honey. Abby says, oh, but you're going to bleed. Old men bleed so easily. She says it in that same intense voice as all those other times when she switched earlier, too. Buzz grabs the oar and starts paddling backwards. Lori runs and grabs the oar from Buzz, and he pushes her away. Can't you see we're messing with something we shouldn't? Buzz screams out. The boat's bleeding, sissy. Abby laughs as this is all going on. Lori slaps Buzz hard and tries to grab the oar, and then she slips on the water on the boat. Realizing that this really is blood, it's not water. We're not going back, Lori screams. They're so close now, so close. There was an oppressive pressure in the air now. It was like Edmund Cox's vibe was all around them. All around. Buzz got up quickly and grabbed the oar and raised it to Lori and says, I don't want to do this, he says, but he hesitates. And as we know from Ishin Ashina, hesitation is defeat. A loud crack rings out. But Buzz didn't hit Lori. His body goes limp and the oar falls into the water. Lori screaming, no! As it did. Buzz's body fell on her, its heavy weight too much to get off in time to grab the oar in the river. I told him he was going to bleed, Abby said. Lori pushed off the big man and Abby looked at him and said, is he dead? His body was limp. His eyelids didn't flutter or anything. Abby had clocked him with her crutches on her hands. Hard. Lori checked his pulse with her fingers. Nothing. All she could say was, oh, Abby. But there was nothing left to do for the man. Abby thinks to herself that she stopped the old guy from hurting Sissy. She had to. But she felt weirdly numb now. Not like earlier when she was really afraid of losing Sissy, and not like recently when she was irrationally angry with Lori. Enough to say the F word. She remembers that word now. F-U-C-K. She remembers what it was. She remembers that she liked to F-U-C-K a boy, once named David, and that made Lori angry. But she can't remember why. She also remembers she used to be so much better than Lori in every way. This river was reminding her of a lot of things. The motor was easy to figure out, though, for Lori. And they went to the beach on the side of the river. They had to do something about the body. The sand near the river was now black, the sky red. It reminded her of when she used to develop photos in a red room. A red tint was over everything. Lori thought to drag Buzz to the woods and bury him, but he was too heavy. So they decided that the only thing they could do was push him in the water. Abby, you gotta help me, Lori said to her sister. I tried to help, Sissy. We could have gone to Mom and Dad together. We could have told them. Lori sighed. Abby, before the murder, things were intense and unnatural, but weirdly, the murder had strangely kept them grounded in reality during this hellscape, in the world they no longer knew. Abby dredging up these memories wasn't right. Sissy likes to make the river run red. They grab Buzz's body, and Abby looks at her sister like a dog, and she asks, Sissy, which foot's the lucky one? You know, like my rabbit's foot. Which one is a human lucky foot? Lori closes her eyes. A deep, dark feeling inside her arose. Failure. Abby had always been better than her. Now, Abby's even killed a man. She's more similar to Edmund than herself again. Once again, Abby could take Edmund if she wanted. She wondered if Nico has already killed for Edmund too. Oh, alright, Abby says after not getting an answer about the foot, and they push Buzz into the water. Lori thought that she could never commit murder. Pete had effectively killed himself, and Abby fell into the river. Sure, Lori let her fall, but she never killed anyone. She doesn't even think she could. This next chapter has a slur every other word, pretty much, and I'm obviously not going to say them, but know that there is a ton of them, and you can figure out when they are said and which one. It's not hard. This letter is from Edmund to Lori. Edmund describes how he once had an uncle named Zeke. Zeke showed him all the important stuff. It was like a brother and a dad rolled into one. Him and Zeke were very close. He taught him about guns, about hunting, about sex. You see, Zeke was a Vietnam War vet, and when he was there, he raped and killed Vietnamese women. Sometimes he'd skin them, cut off their heads and breasts and fuck the corpse. He would take photos of it when he was doing it and then show them to Edmund, at a very young age. It gave him a fetish for Asian women, doctors told Edmund. His uncle told him that nudie mags don't have the good stuff like the pictures. He gifted the photos of him having sex with the corpses to Edmund as a gift. Later in life, Edmund saw Zeke blow his girlfriend's head off with a shotgun. It made Edmund orgasm as he saw it. Then, they took Zeke into a mental institution where he died in his sleep. Edmund says that he probably died peacefully, thinking about killing Vietnamese women. He hopes that he's looking down on him right now from heaven, proud of Edmund and all he's done. He really did love his uncle. In the present, Lori and Abby were just idling on the river when they hear a noise. It sounded like sheet metal being bent in weird melodic notes. A slide guitar was being played. It sounded haunting. It wasn't Chicago blues music like you'd hear on the radio. This was a dirty, raw southern blues music being played on a slide guitar. It seemed to emanate from nowhere. Lori looked at the stern of the boat where the dead man's slide guitar was, but now it was gone. It must have fallen overboard, she thinks. Maybe that kid she saw in the woods found it. Then haunting, wordless singing. It was some dirty, hellish blues. But that's when they finally saw it. A shack on top of the hill. Silhouetted against a now blood-red sky. Black smoke rose from the chimney. Lori hit the motor and ramped it up as fast as she could. She docked the boat on the beach, the sand blackened and the boat cutting apart the river's waves like a wound. Pieces of meat or something littered the river now. Lori didn't want to look at them in fear that she'd see a human finger or something. On the beach, there were now black, pointy rocks like shark teeth as they disembarked from the fishing boat. Lori wondered if she died and went to hell at some point during the trip. This was like another dimension. The Riverman's dimension. She looked up at the shack on the top of the hill. It was very uneven terrain all the way up. She asks Abby if she wants to stay back because the train won't accommodate her crutches. Abby says she wants to see the Riverman too. Lori says she knows, but, you know, Abby snaps, "I'm not the little girl you think you made me, Lori." They climb up the rocks, and Abby does surprisingly well. As they do, Abby begins to slow down slightly. Lori thinks about Abby then for a second. Before she thought that having to take care of Abby was some kind of curse upon her. A curse for what she did to her by not helping her. Abby was always so much better than her. But now? She never should have taken her on this trip. Abby says she's not a child, but she is, Lori thinks. She begins to fester in anger as Abby takes a bit to go up a rock. Lori snaps at her to hurry the fuck up. She should have left her on the fucking boat. Abby just says, "I'm coming, sissy." Lori tells her just hurry up. And then she begins to snicker. For the first time that Lori thought about it, right now, at this point in time, Lori is better than Abby. Here she is, climbing up a rock, scrambling. Lori having to look after her. Here she is, and Lori then calls her a, and I quote, "a crippled mongoloid." They then hear a noise and Abby looks over and screams, "Petey!" Lori says, "Abby, it's not Petey." Abby says, "Don't you remember Petey, Lori? He's our brother, remember?" Lori says she knows, but Petey's not here. He's gone. He's dead. Abby says, "Nuh-uh. I wished on the Riverman to bring him back." Lori says, "He doesn't work like a genie, Abby." Abby says that Petey is their brother. Doesn't Lori miss him? Lori feels a pit in her stomach and a voice rings out, "I'm scared. I can't do it." Abby then turns to Lori, her eyes hollow as the grave, and she says to her, "Put Petey on the swing. He has to be a man sometime." Lori remembers now. This was the exact conversation they had during that summer day the first time they brought Pete to the swing. "Show yourself," Lori calls out. Abby continues, "Don't be such a wussy, Pete." Just then the voice rings out again. "You're gonna get hurt, Lori." Then he appeared. White as the snow. Wispy, lithe, not quite human. Like a stereotypical ghost you'd see on television. See-through, his eyes sunken, and his ribs exposed. Back in the past, Pete had become a scarecrow, pretty much. His eyes sunken in and his ribs clearly visible through his chest. The second psychiatrist said the same thing as the first, that he's sunken into himself. He can't figure out what's wrong. Lori's mom doesn't even cry anymore. After months and months of Pete eating almost nothing and withering away, her mother had cried all her tears. Lori's dad gave her $5 and told her to go get something from the hospital gift shop for Abby as they sit in Pete's hospital room. Lori thinks to herself that Pete's being fucking selfish. She stopped forcing him into sex a week or two ago when Abby fell. It became too much guilt for Lori. And with Abby falling, she stopped so she wouldn't draw attention. But Pete was the baby. Of course he was going to do something like this. Always had to have it his way. As she walked to the gift shop, she passed the physical therapy area of the hospital. There, Abby was trying to walk with 2 bars on either side of her. She fell and screamed when an orderly helped her up. It was hard to see the crumpled mess of her sister on the ground. But there she was, in the brightest room of the hospital, doing her best. She was radiant. The fact that she was so optimistic helped their parents a little bit in this horrible time. They buried Pete 2 weeks after that, and 2 weeks before Christmas. Abby had started walking again around there too, but with the crutches at least. At least enough to go to the bathroom by herself now. Her mom said it was the one Christmas miracle they got. Lori was just happy to hear her mom talk. She never really did anymore. She just stared into the woods and was overtaken by a sadness that never quite went away. After the funeral for Pete, Lori's dad tried to say some words but got choked back by tears. So, to alleviate the burden of her dad, Lori took the urn with Pete's ashes and threw them in the river with the cliff over it. Back in the present day, a meaty odor wafted down the hill to them. It smelled like rotting beef with feces and sulfur all in it. What's he cooking in there? Lori thought to herself, her legs burned from the long climb. But Abby was somehow right behind her miraculously. Almost there, sissy, she said. Lori just says, I just know Petey is in the Riverman shack, Abby says. They continued their climb and trees turned to black and curled into themselves. The blood-red sky rotted away to a dark maroon. Lori wondered what time it even was, but she had a feeling that time really had no meaning here. This place wasn't on Earth anymore. Maybe the Riverman wasn't either. As they climbed, Lori realized something. Since the river turned red, they hadn't heard any noise. No animals. Not a cicada or a frog or anything. Nothing was alive here, other than maybe whatever was imitating Pete. Lori took a swig from her canteen of water and it tasted like coins. Just then, from the silence, a voice rang out. Daddy done made a deal. She looked towards the voice. It couldn't be. I didn't tell you the whole story. A wispy Buzz Flutterjohn walked out from behind a tree. He explains that his daddy once made a deal. A deal with the Riverman. He could play the slide guitar like lightning back then. He got all the fame and fortune that one man could ever want, but it was never enough. Once, his dad killed a man over a woman, not even his mother, and then one day, his daddy came home to see Buzz eating huckleberries on the couch. Buzz dropped them and stained it. His dad beat him until he was black and blue. Buzz's mother tried to step between them, saying that he was killing his son, but he didn't stop. His mom grabbed a frying pan and tried to hit his dad with it, but his dad crushed her skull right in front of the young boy. Lori looked around for Abby, but she disappeared. Buzz smiles and steam releases from his ghost head, and blood and gore spouts out like stew. Just then she heard, "Sissy?" and a hand grabs her shoulder. Abby was back, holding a severed foot. Buzz's from the look of it. It was slick with gore and bone was sticking out. She was just smiling at it, like it was her birthday present. "Did you see him?" Lori asks Abby, and all Abby could say was, "They're all here." Lori says they have to go. It's getting dark. As they finally approached the Riverman shack, a gut-wrenching dread appeared in Lori's mind, even more than before. She felt like shit, but soon she would deliver the key to the Riverman and she would be reborn like a phoenix, right? "Gonna see the Riverman," Abby sung, and it snapped Lori out of her thoughts. They approached and saw the house, and it was placed precariously on a cliff. There were no windows, but from the roof, little black bones hung like Christmas lights, tied together with guitar string. A pentagram on the door and the skull of an animal above it. Some unidentifiable animal skull. Too big to be anything Lori could think of. She had to give the key to him. The door had a lock as well on it. She figured this is what the key would be used for. As she reached for her bag and to grab the key out, she realized she was already holding it. How long had she been holding onto the key? Looking down at it, the key was no longer metal. It was a hardened organic material. Old dried out sinew or something. She stopped looking at it and put it in the lock, and the smell of meat and death penetrated her nostrils. But before anything else, everything ceased. Like she was dead almost. She was floating in a black abyss, right after she turned the key. She floated. It was like she was in a pool. Without even opening her eyes, she could tell she was floating in a black abyss with red stars lining the place, like a black blanket with holes punched in it. A low hum was all around, like a guitar idling in an amplifier. She then thought about Pete, and then she got wet. Why am I reading this? She then thought of all of her sexual partners and felt an intense lust and sexual desire. But as quickly as it came, it faded into a different feeling. It was hunger. She wanted raw steak and vodka. Then after the hunger, another feeling. a want, the need to dominate. The way she dominated Pete, not just in bed, but in his entire life, making him wither at her whim. And now she dominated Abby by letting her fall. She had proved to herself that she was the superior sibling. She could only let one person dominate her ever again. Edmund. Then the hum in the air got louder. Out of nowhere, in the light, faces of animals flickered. Some she didn't even recognize. A tornado of red and blue and purple appeared. It was strange because it had been so long since Lori had seen the color blue, and from that tornado, a shadow appeared. A tall figure holding a slide guitar. His hands were the first thing that she saw. He had 7 fingers on each hand, 2 thumbs on either side of the normal 5 fingers. He moved with a rhythmic grace as a blues song that sounded like doom itself rang out. His hands covered in fingernails, not just where you'd think you'd see them, but his entire hand was covered in fingernails. Lori approached the figure, and it let her. She saw more of him. He had 2 black horns, but they weren't made of bone or whatever horns are usually made of, but flesh. 2 black fingers from his head curling up, pretty much. He had a nest of gray hair, all matted and covered in wasps and worms, in living symbiosis with him. His eyes red where they should have been white, and his teeth exactly like those shark teeth rocks from the beach. He had a patchwork trench coat, a skeletal body with spiderwebs lining the parts of the trench coat. His voice raspy as he sung incomprehensible lyrics, his teeth chittering and shattering as percussion in perfect unison with his guitar playing. A one-man band. When she was a foot away from him, an overwhelming urge to bow came over her, but she resisted, thinking Edmund was the only man that she wanted to bow to. The music loud now, and every note felt like another bit of suffering endured by someone. Each note was somebody's blood spilling. Are you the Riverman? The being twitched, a curled smile. I have to give you the key, right? He said in a booming, rasping voice. Is there any question now? You are the one who belongs to Edmund, the willing one. Lori said yes, her name is Lori. The Riverman says, it doesn't matter what your name is. What matters is what you want. Lori says that she knows what she wants. She knows what she wants now. She wants to be by Edmund's side. Forever. The Riverman says, yes. Yet he murders and rapes women. But you think he's just misunderstood. Like you. Lori says, exactly. Realizing now that she was in the nude, she covers herself a bit and the Riverman sticks his head closer to hers. He asks, are you sure that's what you want? You've made a lot of big decisions in your life, Lori. Can you say that even half of them worked out for the best? Lori says she just wants to be loved, and the Riverman says, ah, yes. Love. Unrequited love from Matthew. Physical love you took from your brother. Secret love from David. Love that grew just enough each time to have an impactful death. But there was always an obstacle. Always the same obstacle. Wasn't there? Lori balls her fist and says, but Abby didn't, but the Riverman cuts her off. Oh, but she did. She stopped your love with Pete. She stole David, and you couldn't have time for Matthew because you had to take care of her. Now you come up my river for Edmund, and yet there is still that same old obstacle in your way. The same wall. Lori looks at him and asks, so what do I do? The Riverman leans in close and says, tear down the wall. When Sissy walked into the house, she collapsed immediately, Abby thought. Abby dropped Buzz's foot immediately in shock. She needed Sissy. She depended on her. She then sensed it. She sensed him more than she saw him. A silhouette of a man, tall and skeletal. Riverman, you gotta help us, Abby screams to him. The Riverman says that Lori has chosen her path, the one she's been on her entire life. He fades out of the silhouette in a fog, and Abby asks where Lori is right now. What path? The Riverman says, the river. The one you two traveled up these past few days. The same one that you fell in and stained red. The same one that Lori spread Pete's ashes in. Abby says, but those are different rivers. The Riverman says, no. There is but one river. He leaned in closer like some old god she couldn't quite grasp his form. Lori's on my river now, and her song's almost over. But what is it you want? Abby says she wants her Sissy back. She doesn't want to be on the river with her anymore. She wants to go home. The Riverman asks, what does she have to offer him? Lori had a key, What does Abby have? Abby hands over Buzz's foot. The Riverman says, your trophy. Abby retorts that it's for good luck. The Riverman says, aren't they always? Just then Abby felt the whole accident again. She felt like she was falling, her bones shattering against the rocks and her face smashing against them, losing all memory and everything. But she was content. She loved Sissy more than anyone. She was helpless. She was mentally damaged. She needed her Sissy. She loved Sissy more than she loved herself. Then she was back, as if nothing happened. The Riverman deteriorated, like ashes from his body blew away. But before they did, he plucked out a toenail from his foot and made it his new guitar pick. Then Lori woke up. When she woke, she felt Abby's arms around her. It annoyed her, the power dynamic of her big sister holding her again. But she now knew what she had to do. Lori got up, and Abby said, "It's okay, Sissy, we can go home now." Abby gathered their packs, and Lori said nothing. They walked out the door and looked over the cliff. Lori saw the rope swing over the cliff's edge, but then she realized it wasn't a rope swing, but a noose. Pete's face emerged from the noose and flickered between red and white and flashed like TV static. Abby wanted you to push me in that day, but you didn't. You waited until I was dead to throw me in the river. The two sisters looked over the edge of the cliff, and Abby asks, "Are you ready to go home, Sissy?" And for a moment, she looked like her old self again. Radiant, not disfigured, beautiful. "I'm ready, Abby." "Are you?" Lori then pushes Abby over the ledge. Abby falls into the rocks with an unsatisfying crack, her blood pooling around the jagged rocks, her neck in a knot looking back up at her sister. Lori returned the blank stare. Lori turned around ready to go down the mountain, only then she realized the shack was gone. Perhaps never there to begin with. Lori turned around and made her way back down the hill. It was much easier without Abby, and when she got out of the boat, she saw a body floating. She figured it was Abby's that had floated down there, but it wasn't Abby. The body was much too big. It was Buzz's body. She got in the boat and pulled the ripcord. It was dark by the time she got the boat back to where they started. At least she thought it was where they started. The color had returned to the world, and Lori was exhausted, tired, hungry. She wanted to rest at Buzz's cabin, but would Jojo let her? He must be hungry, his master dead and didn't feed him all day. She figures that he'll escape and be fine out in this wilderness, so she decides against it. Besides, the sooner she got back to her apartment, the sooner she could get back to prison and see Edmund again. She was number one now. It then began to rain once again. She walked forward and heard voices in the night. She tried to silence them by saying that they didn't have control over her anymore, screaming it in the wind. When she got close back to the car park, she saw a familiar face. The deacon. "I see you got what you needed. I see the look in your eyes. It's the same one I had. I saw them staring back at me after I baptized my children. You done good. You done right." Lori says yes, but she doesn't think she'll be seeing him again, so this is goodbye. The deacon says no, they probably won't see each other again, but he'll be seeing her in the papers, like all the others. He laughs and walks away, singing the gospel in the air yet again. Lori got in her car and heard on the radio that the highway has been shut down. Checkpoints have been set up all around the area because nearby, a prison riot resulted in a breakout. Lori's heart raced. She knew it. Her wish had been granted. The Riverman was real. Radio says that the suspect that broke out was known to be dangerous. The prison riot was the worst in decades. 17 dead because of it and counting. Lori cried tears of joy. Finally, this is what happiness feels like. Alright, last chapter, here we go. She got to her apartment building, somehow avoiding all the traffic stops. All of her emotions came to her at once. She had hoped she would have time to put on lingerie and shave, but as soon as she got home, her apartment door was already open. She had given Edmund her address through the letters. He knew where she lived. She walked inside and saw blood on the floor, pools of it. At this point, she'd been desensitized to it and walked forward through it and followed the bloody footprints. It was already here, waiting for her. "Edmund!" she screamed out. She followed the bloody footprints into her room. The smell was disgusting, but she hates that she'd gotten used to it. It was the same smell as the shack. "In here," he yelled back. She walked in and then saw it. She wasn't as surprised to see it, not as much as she should be at least. Edmund sits on her bed. cradling the decapitated head of Nico. "Hello, darling," he says. Nico's head was purple, her teeth smashed in. Now, don't be jealous. Nico was just here to hold me over. I have my needs, and she saw to them. I called her here. I was hoping you were here, but you weren't. I was at the river, Lori said. Edmund says, yeah, he figured. Going to the river takes time. She finally got back, though. Lori cried tears of joy. She had finally won someone's heart. For the first time in her life, she'd won. But seeing him here, she knew what awaited her. A tear appeared in her eye. She should have known this was going to happen. Edmund was violent. Death was his love letter. They both got naked, and she felt his flesh on hers for the first time. He pulls out a butcher knife that was on the wardrobe, all cleaned just for her. He wipes the tear from her eye. Will it hurt, darling? Lori asks. He replies, love always does. That is it. That is Gone to See the Riverman. There are several themes in this book, and not all of them are readily apparent in this one. There are messages and themes that can't be discerned immediately like some of the other more shallow books we've covered, no pun intended. It isn't surface level as some. But you might be asking yourself, what is the Riverman? Is he just like an eldritch being that represents nothing? Or is he a manifestation or some sort of thought or message? For that matter, what about the river? Is it real? Or once again, is it a metaphor? Well, we're going to be going over all of those themes and messages. But before we get to those, please let me know in the comments what you think the messages here are and the themes are. Also, let me know what you think the Riverman is and what the river itself represents. Put those in the comments before you hear my analysis so you can compare my thoughts after, and I can compare mine to yours. I'll wait. Pause the video. Go ahead. Done? Okay. So let's talk about the themes and messages first. Then we will get into the metaphors of the river and the Riverman himself. First things first, I believe a very unique theme this book talks about that isn't very common is the thought of evil. When you think of evil, you might think of a mustache-twirling evil guy that does things that no human person would ever do, like kicking puppies or stealing from grannies. However, this book represents evil in a different way. This book presents evil as something very alluring, something you might not even think is evil. We see Lori go from semi-rational at the beginning, which, let's be honest, she was never a good person, but she had rational thoughts, at least, kinda. We see her go from that Lori by, to the end, a murderer, doing evil for the sake of it. We literally see her transformation being subtly manipulated throughout the entire story through the power of suggestion to become evil. The whole way it's disguised as something she wants. Evil is alluring. And Edmund is literally playing her to his tune the entire time. And the entire time, she thinks she's doing it for her own sake, even though she is not. Evil is not always easily identifiable as evil. That is what I believe the main message of this book is. However, to go along with that, I believe another message is how obsession can lead to self-destruction. Even if that obsession is love, a normally very good thing. Lori throws all of it away to have love. Her sister, her morals, herself, effectively. She does that more than once in the entire book, at that. Okay, but what is the Riverman? I believe that the Riverman is both the embodiment of corruption, and this is going to be a weird thing to say, but the perfect abuser. That sounds really weird, but hold on. Let me land. The thoughts in our head that corrupt what we think. The subtle suggestion of an abusive person in an abusive relationship for their partner to do things and make them think that they're doing it through their own free will. This destruction is paradoxically longed for and feared. The Riverman is like an eldritch being. Unknowable, cool design, by the way, but he is in a way the perfect manipulator, the perfect abuser, the one that can make anyone do what he wants to do without doing anything himself. It's like Koto Matsukami in Naruto, if you let me nerd out for a second. The river is a little harder for me to pin down. It could be fate. Most obvious answer in what a river usually symbolizes in media like this is fate. The thought that Lori started down this river and she will now reach its conclusion, no matter what she does. She started down the path of evil with Pete, all because of desire. And in the end, the unnatural longing for love will reach its conclusion through Lori's self-destruct. Riverman or no Riverman, Lori was going to follow that river to her own death and the death of those around her, no matter what. But that is about it. I hope you all enjoyed this book. I quite liked it. If you haven't seen my video I put out last Friday on a tier list of all the books, I covered my honest reviews of them all, including this one, and you can see that on the screen right now. I'd appreciate it if you watched it, because if you want to get any suggestions or just see what I truly think about each book, it's a good watch. I do not know yet what book I'm going to be doing next. It's between 3 books: Big Head by Edward Lee, The Wasp Factory by Ian Banks, and Death Spell by David Sodergren, who is the same guy who wrote The Horror, Maggie's Grave, and Night Shoot. I'm probably going to do The Wasp Factory. Let me know what you'd like to see in the comments, though. I want to thank all of you once again, as 50,000 subscribers is a huge milestone, and we're gonna keep going. We're not slowing down. I'm not going to stop doing it because I love to do it. Because I love doing this. And I love each and every one of you for helping me make this my job pretty much now. I love you all. Seriously, I do. And I will see you all in the next one. Bye.